All right, so let's build a table of authorities. So the first thing we need to do is mark our authority. So to do that, you want to go into Insert and then select Index and Tables. Make sure that Table of Authorities is highlighted and then click on Mark Citation. Now from here, we're going to mark all the sites that we want to appear in the Table of Authorities. So start by finding your first authority. This case right here, highlight the whole thing. It's okay if you highlight a little bit extra. Then when you go back to Mark Citations and click it, all the information will appear here. Now this window will include everything that you want to, or everything that will appear in the table of authorities. So make sure we don't have anything in here that we wouldn't want to appear on the table of authorities. So for example, we might want to take out the period, and we certainly want to take out the pin site. Once we have this exactly how we would want it to appear in the table of authorities, we can move on. Now the next thing we want to do is select the category. So from this box right here, we want to select cases. Now if you wanted a category other than this, for example, if you wanted to separate Supreme Court cases from federal cases, you can do that by going over to category. This right here allows you to replace any one of these categories. Simply select what you want to replace, highlight and type it in here. To fully replace it, you have to click replace. If you just click OK, your change will disappear. But the one thing to keep in mind is the categories are going to appear in your table of authorities in this exact order. So for example, if you want to use statutes, but you wanted to separate Supreme Court cases and federal cases, if you change this to say Supreme Court cases and then change down here, this one to say federal cases, you'd have statutes appearing right in the middle. So if you want to do something like that, keep in mind that this is the order that they're going to appear in the table of authorities. So you might just want to go down here and generate a whole bunch of new ones or overwrite statutes. But just remember, this is the order they will appear in the table of authorities. But since cases is fine for me here, I'm just going to select cases. This short citation here, this doesn't mean Blue Book short citations. It just means that later this exact text or whatever you put here is going to appear down here. So if we end up having to mark People v. Fields again because we've cited it somewhere else in our document, rather than retyping it up here, we're just going to select it on the list here. So this just says this is how I want it to appear in this list. This is fine for me, so I'm just going to click mark. And now we can see, if we go into the document, that Word has marked it. And the way they mark it is they add this extra text right here. We can certainly make this text disappear if we want by just going up here and toggling it here. Now we can edit this directly if we want, but usually if you made a mistake, for example, it's easiest just to select it all and delete it. The only thing you might want to edit is this part right here. We'll talk about this in a second. But the C1 here, C1 corresponds to category 1. So if, for example, I'd accidentally marked this as C2 statute, it would say C2 there, and to make it say case, I could just change that back to C1. All right, now from here, we want to go mark the next piece of authority. I can either go down and find it, or I can have Word do it by clicking Next Citation. And Word locates, looks like the next piece of authority, finds the section symbol. So to mark this, I'm going to highlight all of it. Go back here. Again, let's get it exactly how I want it to look. Delete that period. Change category to statutes. Short citation's fine, so I'm going to hit mark. Let's go to the next piece of authority. People v. Young. Simply highlight what you want. We don't need that signal there, nor do we need the parenthetical. Let's go in here, and looks like we need to remove the pin site. That looks fine, but I want to make sure to change statutes to cases. That looks good. And let's just do one more. People v. Fields. Okay, now notice here, this is a case we've already cited before. Now, if I just simply highlight all of this and leave it right here, if I were to hit mark there, Word would actually treat this as two separate pieces of authority. So People v. Fields would appear twice in my table of authorities, and I don't want that to appear. I just want it to say People v. Fields once and then list every single page number that it appears on. So to tell Word that this is in fact the same one as this one right here, I'm not going to hit mark here. Rather, I'm going to click right here, select people view fields, telling Word, hey, it's the same piece of authority that we cited before, and now I'm going to click mark. All right, let's take a look at how this looks. The thing about marking citations is you can stop at any time and pick it up later. So I'm going to close this right now. We can see that we've marked a number of them, but if this looks too busy, we can just toggle that off. Now, let's take a break here and let's generate our table of authorities. So to do that, I'm just going to generate a little bit of space where I want my table of authorities to go. And I'm going to go to Insert, Index and Tables. Again, make sure Table of Authorities is selected. And right here, make sure this says All. If it just says Cases, for example, it's just going to generate the Table of Authorities for cases, not statutes. So make sure that's on All. Hit OK. And there's our table of authorities right now. And you can see that we marked people view fields twice, and Word notices it, and now it says, okay, people view fields, this case appears on page 1 and also page 2. Now let's go on and let's mark a few more pieces of authority. So I'm going to toggle this back on so I can see what we've already marked. And let's go find some more cases that we haven't cited. So let's see, I'm going to start with this one right here, people view Fuller. Again, to mark it, just go to Insert, Index and Tables, mark citation. People view Fuller. Highlight, click. Let's get this to look exactly how we want. And first time we've cited, make sure that you haven't cited this case before, and click mark. Now let's go to the next piece of authority here. It looks like a statute. So I'm going to highlight it. Click here. Let's get rid of that semicolon. And we want to change cases to statutes. And hit mark. Well, let's do one more. Next citation, Mackenzie v. Clement. But let's intentionally make a mistake here. So this is a very common mistake, and we'll just show you how to fix it. I'm going to select this. Go right here. This looks fine. Take off that period. And let's suppose that I forgot to change this from statutes to cases. I just left this as statutes. Let's see what happens. I'm going to hit mark. And now close. All right, so now we've added some more cases, but they don't automatically appear here. You have to refresh these. So I'm going to right-click, Update Field. And notice it updates the case, but not statutes. If we want to update statutes, we have to separately go here and update this as well. Now, if you've got a lot of different categories and you don't want to individually do all of them, an easy workaround is simply select everything, delete it, go back to Insert, Index Table and Authorities, hit OK. Basically, you regenerate to the Table of Authorities. Word will remember all your changes. You're not really losing any information. Now, one thing to notice here is, remember, we intentionally miscategorized Mackenzie v. Clement, so now it appears in statutes, not cases. How do we fix that? Well, we've got a couple of options. First thing we want to do is we want to go down and find out where we cited it. So there it is, Mackenzie v. Clement. One option, usually the easiest one, is we could simply select all this and delete it and then remark it, and that would work fine. But because it's just a miscategorization, we can pretty easily change that. The C2 corresponds to the second category, statutes, but it's not a statute, it's a case. So I'm just going to delete that, put in C1. And now, if we want to change this, we can simply do these individually, or if we want to save a little time, delete it, Insert, Index and Tables, OK. And there we go. Now it's up here and not here, and you can see that it is in fact in alphabetical order, and we have the page numbers right there. So that's how to generate a table of authorities. In the next video, we'll talk about formatting this so that we can get the table of authorities to look as nice as the text in the rest of the document.